Okay, guys, this is the second part of our review, which is focusing on factoring, which is the last thing that we learned in our last lesson 6.6. So with factoring, when you're looking at a trinomial, the first thing you need to do is factor out the GCF of all three terms. Remember that you can type it in your Inspire calculator. You would just type GCD, and I would maybe type in like the biggest and the smallest terms, and you're trying to find out something that divides into both of them, and see what works there. Actually, the two smallest probably works the best. So we'll do 2 and negative 12. And when you type it in, it'll give you your GCD, otherwise known as the GCF. In this case, it is 2 because all three terms are divisible by 2. So where does the GCF go? If you remember, it goes in front of the parentheses. Okay? And then we divide each of them by the GCF to see what is left. So 18 divided by 2 is 9, 9x squared. Negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6x. And 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I do see that as one of the answer choices, keeping in mind that we're selecting two things that are equivalent to that original trinomial, okay? And one of them is answer choice B, because that is factored form right there. All we've done, though, is factor out the GCF. We haven't actually factored. Keep that in mind. We haven't finished factoring, rather. So we factor out the GCF first, and then look at what remains on the inside. Okay, that would be this. Now we start to actually factor that part of it. Our A value being 9, our B value being negative 6, and our C value being 1. We are not using that 2 in the front because we have already factored out that GCF. We are not worried about that. We're only focusing on what's in those parentheses right now. There's our new A, B, and C. Remember then, we make an eye chart. In the top, we multiply the A and the C values together. So 9 times 1 is 9. And in the bottom, we put the B value, which is negative 6. Now, in the eye chart itself, we put all the numbers that multiply to give us 9. So 1 times 9, 3 times 3. And you would think that's it. But remember that a negative times a negative can also give you a positive 9. So what if it was negative 1 or negative 9, or negative 3 and negative 3? Those would also multiply to give you a positive 9. Now, which pair do we pick? We pick the one that adds up to the B value. So in this case, negative 3 plus negative 3 is negative 6. Now, what do I do? What do I do next? This is usually the part where we get stuck. I'm going to rewrite that trinomial that's in the parentheses over here. 9x squared minus 6x plus 1. The first term, 9x squared, stays as it is. The last term, the 1, stays as it is. But the middle number, the negative 6x, splits. And we use these guys. Okay, negative 6 splits into negative 3 and negative 3. But it's negative 6x, which means it has to split into negative 3x and negative 3x. From here, we group the first term and the first two terms and the last two terms, and we factor out the GCF from each of them. So in the first set of parentheses, our GCF, both of those are divisible by 3, and they both have x's, so the GCF is 3x. So we need to divide each of them by 3x to see what's remaining in the parentheses. 9x squared divided by 3x is 3x, because you had 2 x's in the numerator, and when you take 1 out from the denominator, there's only 1 remaining. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and if you have 1x and you take away 1x, there are no x's left. So it's just minus 1. Now, over in the second set of parentheses, if we're trying to find the GCF, it's a little bit harder. Both of them are divisible by 1. They don't both have x's, so it's not 1x, But because that first term is negative, our GCF isn't just 1, it's -1. Remember, the GCF always goes on the outside of the parentheses. Okay, so now divide them both by -1. -3 divided by -1 is +3. 1 divided by -3 is -1. And we always know we're right if the two parentheses, what's inside of them, are the same. So we're heading in the right direction. And whatever is in those parentheses, that's one of your answers. We have factors, right? 2 factors is what we always get. One of them is 3x minus 1, so I'm going to mark those out. And then look to see what's remaining. 3x and then -1. Interesting. They came out exactly the same. So something to note is another way to write that is 3x minus 1 squared. Because when you're multiplying something times itself, you can write it as that squared. And see how the 2 is still in the front? Because it was still the original GCF that we had on the outside. So personally, if I was doing this problem and I knew the GCF was 2 from the beginning, I know that this is not a correct answer and this is not a correct answer. So it didn't leave too many answer choices left. Now, if you get one of these right and the other wrong, that's okay. You'll get partial credit, but make sure that you're showing work on your test. All right, take a moment, pause the video, and try factoring number 12. Okay, so let's look at number 12. First, you check to see if it has a GCF. Is there a number that 15, 19, and 6 are all divisible by? There is not, besides 1. Because 19 is a prime number, there is no number that will divide into 19 besides 19 and 1. So we do not really have a GCF. So let's determine our A, B, and C. A is 6. B is -19. And C is 15. Take a moment to try and finish solving this, and then I will reveal the answer. Okay, guys, check your work. There were a lot of things that multiplied to give us 90, but 9 times 10 worked the best because 9 plus 10 is 19. But then I noticed I needed -19, so I made them both negative because a negative times a negative will still give me that positive 90 at the top. Okay, then I split the -19 into -9x and -10x, grouped them, found their GCFs, divided by those GCFs. You can see the GCFs are here highlighted in front of the parentheses. And then we knew that those two parentheses that were the same, knew that our answer was right, wrote that as one of our factors, and then marked them out. What was left, the 3x and the -5, was our other factor. Okay, so it asks you which one of these is one of the factors. And so 2x minus 3 is not on there, but 3x minus 5 is. Okay. Take a moment, pause the video, and try the next question, number 13. Now, number 13 is interesting because it looks like it's just factoring out the GCF. Like, because remember, the number in front, or the term in front, is the GCF. So I guess we can eliminate some answers by knowing whether 21D is the GCF or is it just 21. So look at the two terms. One of them is 210D squared. So I'm writing it because it looks a little confusing up top. So I'm going to write it again. Minus 63D. Well, obviously they're divisible by 21. But do they both have the letter D in that term? Yes, they do. See, right here and right here. Okay, which means that D is also part of the GCF. Okay, so that means these two are not correct because the GCF is not 21, it's 21D. So now we're dividing each of them by 21D to get what remains. 10D minus, remember the GCF goes in front, and 63 divided by 21 is 3. Okay, and it's a minus, so that tells us it's A. Okay. Pause the video and try number 14. The last question on the review. Okay, guys, so start off in this problem by identifying your A, B, and C. So if there's no number there, then there's a 1. Keep that in mind. So our A is 1, our B is -8, and our C is -48. Okay, so we are going to, I'm going to make a space below it so you can see it a little bit better. We're going to start out by making our eye chart. A times C, so that's 1 times -48 is -48. And then the bottom is our B value, -8. So let's think about what are all the things that multiply to give us -48. So we've got 1 times 48, 2 times 24, 3 times 16, 4 times 12, 6 times 8, and I believe that is it. Now those are all positive though. We need -48. So usually what I think about is if I add the numbers or subtract them, they should one of them should equal 8. I know it's not this first one. Those don't add or subtract to give us 8. Or these ones. But I do know, even though 4 plus 12 is 16, 12 minus 4 is 8. So let's make one of them negative, but it's very important to know which one. So if I have -4 and +12, or +4 and -12. Let's see, these ones add up to +8, these ones add up to -8. So the 12 is the one that has to be negative. Keep that in mind, okay? Alrighty, so let's take our polynomial, the original, and we split the middle term. Remember, this term is going to get split. So we've got x squared at the beginning and -48 at the end, but that -8x will split into +4x and -12x. And remember, we got those from these two numbers. All we had to do was put x's after them. Split them into groups and find their GCFs. Okay, so the GCF of the first one is just x. They both have x's in common. So if there are two x's, you take away one, there's one remaining. 1x, take away 1x, it's gone, so all that's left is the 4. Now here, both of these ones are divisible by -12. Remember, if the first term is negative, the GCF should be negative. So -12 is the GCF, so divide them both by -12. So we get -12 divided by -12 is 1, so 1x. And -48 divided by -12 is +4. Notice once again how the parentheses are the same. That's good. That's one of our factors, x plus 4. Mark them out. And what's remaining? We have an x and a -12. So x minus 12 is your other factor. Now, since this is a drag and drop, please make sure that they go in the right place. It's x plus 4. So since this one has the plus, this is where the 4 should go. You drag it right here. Since this one has the minus, this is where the 12 goes. It's very important that you put them in the right place because it's x minus 12, not plus. You would not want to put the 12 here where the 4 is. Okay, so you would just drag the correct answer. Just make sure you drag it to the correct spot. The placement does matter. Okay, study hard, guys, and good luck on your test tomorrow.